Hello everyone, my name's Phil Calvert and a very warm welcome to the Financial Advisor Mastermind and Challenge. Throughout this week, advisors, leading experts and consultants to the financial planning profession are sharing amazing insights into just what makes a world-class financial advice business. Today, I'm absolutely delighted to be speaking with someone who is a business psychologist and neuroscientist. She's the author of Your Brain is Boss, Using Mind Power to Develop Influence, Creativity and Work Satisfaction. And she's published multiple blogs around neuroscience and the world of work on Forbes.com. She also loves her rock and heavy metal, so I'm really pleased delighted to welcome Dr. Lynda Shaw. How are you, Lynda?
Hi, Phil. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm excellent, thank you very much. So we better get this done straight away. What was the last big gig that you went to see?
Sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
What was the last big gig you went to see?
Last big gig I went to see, oh gosh, I did about half a dozen last year. The Who, AC/DC, these ancient people.
Excellent.
The average age was about 75 on stage. Do you know the guy who's AC/DC? You know the guy with the guitar who plays as a schoolboy?
Angus, yeah.
Yeah, he actually took it. The time he didn't come off the stage at all for the whole gig, and he took taken off all these clothes, and he ended up with just his school shorts on, and he was playing his guitar. The sweat was dripping off him, and he laid on the stage on his back, and he did the circle thing, which he's very famous for. And I thought, this guy's gonna have no skin on his back. It's just amazing. I find it's fantastic how people who have seriously lived in the fast lane and have used their health incredibly over the years are still out there performing and have packed houses. This was at the O2, packed house, and there was this. The audiences were children up to ancient people, and it just fantastic. I loved it, and I think it's indicative of what our society is like now. Is we're looking at 4 or 5, sometimes 5 generations of people at any one go. It's brilliant.
Yeah, and it clearly has implications for people's ability to earn. Either in retirement or as they get older. Incidentally, I think I last saw AC/DC in about 1980, and Angus was doing exactly the same thing. And for any of us to think that people in their 60s and 70s and some older are still touring the world is amazing. And I think that has, as you say, profound implications for aging and society. So first of all, just tell us about yourself, what you do. What is a business psychologist and a business neuroscientist?
Well, I started out, I've got a doctorate in neuroscience looking at unconscious processing of emotion. And I really love the subject of consciousness and unconscious processing, because if I said to you an A4 sheet of paper, that was the whole brain, conscious and unconscious processing. And just to mark on that piece of paper how much of the brain is conscious processing. So neuroscientists have got together and they've come to the conclusion it's about a tiny little point in conscious processing, and the rest is unconscious processing, and that's phenomenal. So I really love that topic, and I think it's the way forward. In fact, Harvard Business School have said repeatedly for some years now that the future of business is psychology and neuroscience. Okay. So that's great for me. Yeah. That's totally my ball game, and I love it. So basically, I look at why people do what they do and how people can communicate better when they are trying to help their clients with any kind of product or services they're providing, so that they understand the psychology of what's going on, what to say, what not to say, and how that actually buffers back to themselves and their own mental health and well-being, which is a huge subject at the moment, massive.
Yeah. Well, with the advent of TED and TEDx, there's a lot of brain science content available on the internet these days, which I understand a lot of it is pure myth. So we need to kind of know what we're talking about. So what is it? What's important for business people to understand about the brain?
Everything's important to understand about the brain, and I don't expect anybody to understand the biology and the chemicals and all of that stuff. I mean, the brain isn't just, we are not just biology and chemicals. However, what we do changes the brain. That changes the brain to take what we do. So we have this behavioral changes and how the brain responds and how it grows and develops. There's always a feedback loop. So if we understand that, and we understand that we're not just products, we're not just our DNA and our hormones. We're also perhaps our environmental and social upbringing, what we do at work, what we do in our social life. We are also influenced by our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions. There's all of this going on. What it means is we are actually able to be more in control than we think we are, of what we say, what we do, how we live, how well we are, and how we respond and react to our clients. And when we get that, then we have a much stronger business.
So what are the practical benefits of understanding this? I mean, from what I'm hearing here, we're talking about almost a new skill set that people need to have, whether we do what you and I do, whether we're a financial advisor talking with our clients. What sort of specific skills do we need to start learning?
Specific skills are, for instance, in the financial services, of course, if you are speaking to a client, an elderly client, for instance, sometimes you have got their grown-up child with them as well. So you're now talking to somebody perhaps in their 70s or 80s or beyond, and then you're also talking to somebody in their 50s and 60s who's feeling a little bit touchy about you coming in to speak to their parent, and they're on the defense, and because, you know, this is my inheritance you're talking about here, which drives me mad, but it's true. So it's my inheritance you're talking about, so it's mine. The parent's going, well, hang on a minute, I actually don't like you very much. Because you only visit me when somebody comes along to talk about my financial planning, and otherwise I don't get to see you or my grandchildren or indeed my great-grandchildren. But we've got these huge dynamics going on. And it's a big problem. So if we can understand the psychology of the person who we're trying to serve, who tends to be the older person in this situation, and where the child is coming from, who they were, who they are now, and what they're trying to achieve, and what actually is the buzzwords, if you like, the stuff that actually makes them feel that you're listening to them as well as listening to the parent, then you've got a lovely triangle, or sometimes four ball going on, where you can make more inroads and become more effective.
Okay. Now we not everyone's going to go start taking a course on psychology necessarily, but so how do we actually go about learning this stuff?
Me.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Phil. From me. I work with financial services quite a lot, IFAs and financial planners, talking to them about their specific business, their specific industry, because we're in the same business. Right. My mantra is be in control and get a grip. So that's what you guys do. You help people in control of their financial destiny, their financial pot, their planning, their dreams, their ambitions, whatever they're trying to do with their money. And financial well-being is absolutely huge to the general psychology of someone, because if they feel they've got their head in the sand, they don't want to think about their finances because they're out, it's like all too much. I'm up in the red, something's going wrong. I've got money in a pot that I don't even know where it is anymore, or whatever. Scary place, and it's really, really stressful. And can cause all sorts of problems, real big problems. So we're in the same business. We're in the same business of being in control and getting a grip. So what I've done is I've created a neuroscience professional development program, and it's also a membership club whereby people get videos from me, a real neuroscience, from somebody who really gets what's going on in the financial service industry, because I work with you so often. And that comes into your inbox every month for a monthly membership fee.
Well, we'll make sure that people can get access to that. That sounds absolutely fantastic. I understand you've done some work with some large providers as well, in terms of how the words and the language they use comes across. Can you just sort of talk a little bit about that?
Okay. I think it must have been about 5 years ago now. I lose track of time, to be honest with you. But Standard Life did a project, and a project where they wanted to understand the words they were using made a difference in their marketing material. So they did a neuroimaging experiment as well as a behavioural experiment. And what they did was they put people in front of a computer screen, and up on the screen, and whilst they were wired up, they use words in the fictitious letter from a fictitious pension provider, sort of words that they would use normally in their marketing material. Those terribly boring words for me, but I know that in the financial world they're desperately important, about pie charts and no emotion type words. I then put up on the screen another letter that was all about negative emotional words like struggling and survival, words like that. And then they still wired up. And then the third letter was all about positive words like saving for your family or holidays, positive upbeat words. And there was no doubt that the neuroimaging results were such that the positive emotional words had more of a positive effect on the brain, to the point, and this is key, the point that people actually went off and took out pension plans and savings plans and all of those things. So it actually galvanized them into action. So the key was that for Standard Life, and they were really shocked at the results, was that the positive emotional words had much more of an impact on how well they were serving people. So then I had to analyze that, and I looked at it, and it seems to me that unless you, if you're talking in negative emotional words, unless that's a real issue for that person right now at that moment,
yeah,
they're going to go, well, yeah, that's interesting, and that's the killer. That's the killer. If they, as soon as they say it's interesting, they're going to go, you know full well they're not actually going to do anything, and they're just going to park it somewhere.
yeah.
So the brain actually habituates if there is not an immediate threat. So if you've got somebody who's got a problem right now and you can fix it right now, and listen. But if you are trying to help with their financial planning on a longer term where there isn't an immediate threat, then it is the positive emotional words that you use which have much more of an effect.
That's fascinating, and I guess this also extends to teams as well. You've done work with teams, and I don't like the words, but destructive behaviours that go on within teams. And most financial advisors work as part of a team, whether it's a really small team or a big team. Can you give us some insights into how they could make that team environment more productive?
Okay. If I said to you, Phil, if I said to you right now, what is the one word that people want to feel, no matter who they are and anywhere on this planet? What is the one word people want to feel? What would you think it was?
Safe, something like that. Secure.
Words? No.
Comfortable.
Significant.
Okay.
People want to feel significant. They want to feel they're being heard. They want to feel they're listened to. They want to feel they're contributing. So if you have got a team that is not working so well, maybe one person isn't feeling that important.
Right.
So if you have, well, this is just one of the tips. There's plenty of things to do. If you have got a team you're working with, and it's not, you know full well it can actually work better, it's a good idea to speak to each one of them to find out what really motivates them. And unless, as research shows, that unless somebody's on the breadline or just above the breadline, it's actually not money. It's actually something else that really motivates them. It's different for everybody. So it's worth knowing what it is in those teams that's really motivating them, and then make sure you are servicing that, you're handling that, and making sure that everybody's getting that kind of satisfaction. And their team will work much better because they will feel significant. They will feel that they're an important person too, like everybody else, equally as important as everybody else.
That's really interesting. Presumably then that has implications for team building and team building exercises. I remember when I worked for a provider, large provider, quite a few years ago, our own team, there were 6 or 7 of us in our team, and we were carted off and dumped in the wilds of Wales one evening and given various tasks to do. And then once we'd done those tasks, they got us climbing high ropes and stuff like that. For me, and I know 2 of the other guys, it was the most appalling experience. They did anything but build teams.
I think that's right. I think I've been involved in those things before, not as a participant, not handling them. And I think what happens is you've assumed that a level playing field, it's going to create a level playing field, and that's not true, because Some people are going to be fitter than others. Some people are going to be better at climbing than others. Some people are going to be obese. Some people are going to hate that sort of thing. Like, whoa, I'm more of an introvert. Don't do this team stuff with me. It's a real, you've got to know your people. You can't just blanket this stuff out there and let's go expecting everything to happen. However, the caveat there, with my kids as they were teenagers, I was very keen for them to realise how privileged they have been or still are in our upbringing, and I wanted to get them out to third world countries where they could see real life, the majority of the planet, and we did, and I put them on things like places that none of us have been to before, doing things that none of us had done before. So I wasn't the parent. I became just like them. Like, you can't do this, it's too hard, something like that. And I'll give you one instance. We had to negotiate cycling. It's some crazy part of the world. We were cycling, and my son knew the way back, and he decided he was going ahead. And I knew he had to negotiate a roundabout, had about 8 exits, and there were no rules. There was all lorries, and it was horrible. And I thought, he was 15, thought he was a man, and I thought, so I cycled like fury, absolutely like fury. I'm shouting, Michael, really, really, really cycling, because trying to keep up with a 15-year-old was not easy. And he finally heard me, and he turned around and went, "What are you doing, Mum? What are you doing?" I went, I'm coming back too, but I don't know the way. So he went, "Oh, okay, just do what I do." So now he's concentrating. Now he's concentrating on his own safety because he's looking after me. And he became the parent. So we got to the roundabout. He said, "Right, Mum, I'll tell you when to go and just go." I went, "Okay." So I did. And he took me around the roundabout. And I knew that was the only way he was going to pay attention to his own safety, thinking about me. So I flipped it, absolutely flipped it. So he became the parent. And I think with any kind of team exercise, if you can switch roles with people, you don't have to be going to some crazy place for it to happen, but doing something where maybe you're all going for a walk or something where you're all looking in the same direction, having the same goal, and you haven't got a desk between you or anything like that. Something where you getting out in the fresh air, something innocuous like that, or indeed just a change of scenery, going to a hotel somewhere in a conference room somewhere nice with decent food, something where you've a convivial atmosphere where everyone's relaxed, and then switching roles, that works, because then people understand what it's like to be them and understand the contribution that person is giving, when they may have thought, well, actually, you're a waste of space. I don't actually, you're not doing much good for this team. But when you switch roles, flip it, you then start to appreciate one another more.
That's really interesting, because I'm increasingly hearing some financial advisors talking about their clients as part of their team. And I would imagine that flipping of roles could work well in the advisor-client relationship as well.
Yes, I think it could. You've got to know your client well, and they need to understand what you're doing. They would need to understand where you're coming from. You have to be quite very transparent when you do something like that. Yeah. So people then don't feel there's any mystery, or there's something that they could feel silly about, or it might feel that you're trying to con them out of something. You've got to be very open and transparent about it. Yeah, have to work.
Interesting. Now, you've done some work in various universities on brain impairment and the effects on aging. We have an aging population. This has profound implications for financial planning. Can you just give us some insights into what that kind of work has told you, and maybe any lessons that financial advisors need to be aware of?
I think one of the key things that I've found is that when you are dealing with different generations of people, if you can understand or think to yourself, right, their date of birth is this, when were they teenagers and what country were they in? Now, if they were in the West and they were in teenagers, say in the, let's think, 1960s, so they would now be in their 60s, approaching 70s now. If you think of yourself, right, what was happening in the West in the 1960s? We had and the bomb demonstrations. We had anti-Vietnam demonstrations. We had contraception. Women had the pill from 1960. We had Martin Luther King with his amazing, amazing speech, I Have a Dream. We had all of those things going on. So that person, in the 60s, when they were a teenager, the brain was doing a lot of pruning. So as we do when we're teenagers, so we become even more influenced by our environment around us. Now, what this means is that helped shape that person. So a person now in their late 60s, early 70s, when they were teenagers, they were idealists. They were idealists because they were out there, were doing something. They were demonstrating on the streets. Things were going to change. It was going to be an amazing time. They were going to do really significant stuff. And then since those teenage years, that person crud has happened, layer upon layer upon layer upon layer, right? It's called life. So all of this has gone on. They're still that idealist. That's who they still are. That's who they really are. So when you think about that, and you are dealing with them, think about that person, who they really are, under the crud. Think about them being an idealist, and help them satisfy that. Help them feel that they are still that person who is doing this amazing stuff. If you said to somebody in their 60s, if you said to somebody younger, what do you do? They will say, well, I'm a salesperson. If you said to somebody in their 60s, what do you do? They say, I'm a salesperson for Vodafone. They have a pride in belonging to the organisation they belong to. So it's different. So my best advice is to consider, and I've talked about this in universities, to consider the different age groups and who they really are, and a clue will be what they were like as teenagers, what their upbringing was as teenagers. It's not foolproof. It's a good template to work with.
That's really interesting, because the vast majority of financial planners, when they're getting to know a client, clearly there's the hard facts. How much do you earn, or how much have you got invested? And increasingly, financial planners ask questions about the future. And they encourage them to project themselves a few years forward, and then to and look back and say, what would you regret if you were to die tomorrow? What would you regret not having done? Which is absolutely fantastic. So it's all about now and the future. But many financial advisors, they don't actually go back deep into the past. And you're saying the past could actually be a big influencer as to the relationship they have now.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you regret? You know what? That's a very negative place to put somebody in. What do you regret? Unless it's something obvious like, I regret not being able to afford to go to university. I would like to be able to afford to get a degree now.
Yeah, they don't quite do it as bluntly as that. There's a way of doing it, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, but it would be much better if you just said, so what was it like when you were growing up? What was it, when you were a teenager, when you were 15, some year, when you were 17, what was it like? What did you want to do? What were your aspirations? Where did you think you were going?
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. They will really, if you give them a year, they will remember back. Well, rather than say, what were you like as a younger person? If you give them a year. So when you were 15, what's like? And how different was that by the time you were 17? It will warm to you enormously, and you'll be able to work out who they are and where they want to be.
That's really interesting. So just sort of practically now, that's a really interesting tip, really useful tip. Pick a year and ask them how they felt at that time. If you were going to give a financial advisor a couple of tips right now in terms of modifying their behaviour when they're with a client, what sort of areas would you be looking at?
I understand that financial advisors and financial planners, you need to give them your clients a lot of facts and hard stuff, which is not necessarily what people want to hear. So my advice is, first of all, to actually put their brain in a pleasurable state. you put the brain in a pleasurable state by asking them what was it like when you were a teenager, and they will warm to it, even if it's some negative things that were going on. It's familiar to them. It's about them. You're making them feel significant. You're making them feel important. That you're really interested in that. So then start using positive words. Use the words that they use, the positive words that they use, and sort of have a script. Never have a script. So you start to feedback, and you're using the language, and they will feel that you've really listened to them and they've really been heard.
Yeah.
It's very important. So then you start using those words, but positively, positive words. So use the language. Language is really important. And I know you have to deliver all of this incredibly complicated stuff sometimes. Please remember, only give them bite-sized bits of what they need to hear, and then don't bombard them with that. They would just go, just give them what they need, what they want to hear, because you've been listening closely. And then you know full well you've got to give them the other stuff. You do that once you've made a decision of where they want to go and where they want to be.
Yeah, fantastic. We've had a number of people I've been speaking to on these interviews about how important it is for financial advisors to really work hard on their business. Clearly, skills are critical, and we're learning new skills all the time, just as we're hearing today. So there's a lot of focus on business development, practice management, getting it right, getting it as perfect as possible. But I read you've done some interesting work, and I saw a blog that you posted on Forbes about perhaps steering away from perfectionism, letting it go a bit. Just can you tell us a little bit about that?
We are really, we can touch a button and get as much information as we want. And because of that bombardment, I think that adds to this idea that we should know all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This is overwhelm, the pressure. You shouldn't have to know that stuff. We can't be these all singing, all dancing people. We can only do our best. And the thing is, the brain makes decisions on actually what is good enough, not what is perfect. So if we in ourselves strive to be perfect and strive for perfectionism, and it gets to the point where it delays progress. For instance, if you have written a document and you don't want to give it away because it's not quite perfect, so you miss the deadline, that's not good. That's tipping into mental health issues. Okay, so if you become so enshrined in perfectionism, you can actually become very poorly.
Right.
So it's let it go. Don't allow yourself to slip into that place. Go with what is good enough, because otherwise you're going to burn out, and you will be unwell. So watch the perfectionism. In fact, it's even in the DSM, which is the manual that all psychologists and psychiatrists use around the globe. And perfectionism is in there as a mental health disorder.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Interesting. So what sort of things could we do? So we heard one thing there. What else could we do to work on our brains? Obviously, I said to you earlier, I've just been for a run this morning, so I'm working on the physical side of things, and it'll also help my brain as well, hopefully. What are there sort of things that we can do to keep our brain healthy?
Well, there's something new out there which is really fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
A medical conference this year, well, probably end of last year now, brought together some of the world's leaders, medical leaders in Alzheimer's disease. And now Alzheimer's disease, as we know, we're trying to get to the bottom of, and it's a real tough call, really is. What with the amyloid plaques and the tau protein, and so it's a big issue.
Yeah.
You ask anybody, what you're afraid of more, Alzheimer's disease or cancer, and they will say Alzheimer's disease. Yeah. So, the new thing on the block is this: we all know eating properly is important. We all know that to have a healthy brain is important. You've got to eat a colourful plate. What I mean by colourful plate is a load of purples and oranges and greens and red and all of those things which are highly nutritious vegetable type food. We all know that. We need the omegas, we need the oils. We know this. We also know we need exercise very, very badly. We need about 30 minutes cardiovascular work, high CV work for about 30 minutes to actually help the brain, or indeed even some weight training as well will help the brain and the rest of the body. We know about that. We know we've got to control our blood pressure. I'm talking of this in terms of Alzheimer's disease as well as everything else. We know we need to do that. We know we need to control cholesterol. We know we need to do that. But here's the interesting one. We have discovered, for some years, there's been a correlation between deafness and dementia and Alzheimer's disease.
Okay.
But I've never quite understood how that correlation works. I've never quite got that. But now there's research is showing that it's actually when you are trying to hear, it's not easy for you to hear. Something as minute, a deafness no more than about 10 decibels, really slight hearing loss, not a one. If you're struggling to hear, the brain heats up. It's exhausting and the brain heats up. And they believe that is the reason or a part of the cause of Alzheimer's disease. And this is fascinating. So if you have got even a slight hearing problem, getting hearing aids, which people go, oh my God, I don't want a hearing aid. But even if it's something like, they've got new technology coming out where you can put your phone on the table in a meeting. And if you've got a hearing aid or something in your ear, there's actually a microphone for that meeting. It's coming out this year. Brilliant technology happening. So it's just even a slight hearing loss. So if we can get over the stigma of wearing hearing aids, we will let's face it, how many kids are walking around with things coming out of their ears these days? Everyone's got to go in the gym. Nobody's got anything. Their ears are full. So if we can actually stop the brain, this overheating thing, we're struggling to hear, we actually might do ourselves a huge amount of good. I think that's a bit exciting.
That's really interesting because we often seem to focus on our eyesight probably first of all, but hearing is secondary. That's really interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, the other thing is I'm actually doing some research with developing brain and children with glue ear, and I'm involved with the research for that, and it's really fascinating because it means that the child also is not hearing properly. Their brain is heating up. What's that going to do to the developing brain? It's a very big topic.
Yeah, fascinating. Thank you so much. Lynda, we're asking everybody that we're talking to on these videos to set a little challenge for our financial advisor audience, something that they may be big or something they could do just today or for the next week. If you were going to set a challenge to our financial advisors, what would it be?
I would suggest keeping a diary. It's a little notebook, nothing major, a diary, or if you have permission to record some of your meetings and just listen back and take note of the language you're using.
Okay.
Because what you think you're saying might not be what actually people are hearing. So just check on yourself. You're using positive language that relates to the people you're dealing with. That's my challenge.
That's a great one. Thank you very much. We've had some fantastic challenges. And people watching this will be able to have the opportunity to join a private forum where they can look over all the challenges, take up the ones that they want to, report on how they're getting on, ask questions, get accountability partners. I think that'll be a great one. Thank you very much, Lynda. So just a quick reminder, the Neuroscience Professional Development Program for Financial Advisors is coming out when?
In April. The club comes out in April. It's going to be absolutely brilliant. I'm very excited about it. So yeah, you'll be on my website. It's having its own website. It's just being finished now. With www.neuroscienceprofessional.com will be the mothership website. But otherwise, my own website is drlindashaw.com.
Fantastic. So if people want to get in touch with you, we'll make sure they get your link and your contact details. Lynda, thank you so much for being with me today. I really appreciate your time. Absolutely superb. Thanks to everybody else for watching today, and we'll see you on the next video. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.